prepare for reading, have your books at the corner of your desk. Last night for homework, you got to read about some new friends Leo made. What was one of their names, Matthew?
Angelica.
Angelica. Who was the second one, Luke?
Ella.
Correct. Now, Angelica and Ella, they rhyme because their names at the end, they go together. Look at the words on my board. Read the first word for me, Matthew.
Pudding.
Pudding, that's correct. And what is pudding? What's your favorite kind of pudding?
Chocolate.
Chocolate pudding. We're going to read about the children at the Merritt house. Their favorite dessert is going to be pudding. Luke, stand and read my second word.
Perched.
Perched. Now, perched is what a bird does. They'll sit on a tree, and that's what they do. When they're sitting there, that's called perching. So we're going to read about a bird that is perching in our story. Take out your books, turn to page 9, and we are going to be reading today, and I'm going to be listening for smoothness while we read. And in our last lesson, Miss Pembridge, I said something wrong. I made a mistake. I said the word plump. I didn't say the right meaning for it. Plump, I want you to think of a pillow that your mom has a couch or your pillow that you sleep on, how it's light and soft and fluffy. That's how they were describing Miss Lucy. She was just so happy and sweet, and she just wanted to hug her because she was a plump lady. So take out your books, page 9, and Luke, stand and begin reading for us and begin with our title.
A Marble and Some Friends. Leo and Nick followed Mrs. Merritt down the long hall. Unlike Miss Lucy, Mrs. Merritt was quite young. Leo thought the clothes she wore made her look important, and she seemed to walk with her head held high. When they entered the busy dining hall, they joined a long table of children Mrs. Merritt told Leo to find a seat.
Reread that sentence and make sure you pause after punctuation so we have smooth reading.
When they entered the busy dining hall, they joined a long table of children. Mrs. Merritt told Leo to find a seat, and Nick followed her up to the head of the table. Just then, a hand tugged at Leo's sleeve. He turned to see a little girl with red hair. She motioned for him to sit across from her.
Thank you. You may have a seat. So why did Leo think that Mrs. Merritt looked important? Matthew.
Because she just had like a presentable business look on her.
That's right. She had nice clothes on. She walked with her shoulders high. She walked like she was in charge. So it looked like she was important to Leo. Stand and continue reading for me, Matthew.
He went around the table and sat. After Mrs. Merritt took her seat, they began to eat. You are new.
So that's going to be our contraction. That's the two words that make the contraction. But what does that contraction say?
You're new, aren't you? Said the little girl. I am Angelica Chris. But Miss Merritt says...
Not Miss Merritt.
Mrs. Merritt says you don't have to say the last part all the time. You don't have to say the last part all the time. So you can just call me Angelica.
Thank you for reading, Matthew. You may have a seat. The children's house, Mrs. Merritt, she sat and then they began to eat. We need to make sure that we pray before we eat and thank God for the food that He's given to us. Turn the page 10. Continue reading. Stand and continue reading for me. Luke.
Hi, I'm Leo, he said, and I'm Ella, the blonde girl next to him said as she tossed her hair.
So pause right there. Tossed her hair. That doesn't mean that she threw her hair. That just means she took her hand and she flung it over her shoulder. That's what that means. Continue reading for me, Luke.
Make sure you eat all your food or you don't get dessert. We get dessert? Leo asked with his wide eyes. Pudding, Angelica cheered, but only if you eat it all. She pointed to his green beans with her fork. Leo ate the beans in no time. There was no way he'd miss out on pudding. Between bites, he looked down the table at Nick. He looked like he had learned his lesson. His chin was resting on his hand, and he was pushing the beans around on his plate.
Thank you, Luke. You may have a seat. So what was the dessert that they were going to get for eating, Matthew?
Pudding.
Now, there was something that they had to do before they could get pudding. What was that? Matthew, yes.
They had to eat all their food that was on their plate.
What specifically on their food that they had to eat first?
Their beans.
Their beans. No, when I was younger, my mom, she used to make us eat all of our vegetables too. Because that's the healthy part. If you just eat dessert, that's not good for your body. So you have to make sure you're putting healthy food in too. And Mrs. Merritt, she wanted to make sure that all of the children there at the Merritt house, they were going to be healthy too. Stand and continue reading Luke.
Maybe I have something that will cheer him up, Leo thought to himself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a shiny marble. He had found it one day out in the woods.
Ooh, thank you, Luke. You may have a seat. Matthew, stand and continue.
When he had dusted the dirt from it, he saw that the marble was two of his favorite colors. He had never had many toys, and he thought this marble was pretty special. It was the biggest and best marble he had ever seen, and it was always in his pocket.
Thank you, Matthew. You may have a seat. Make sure when we're reading, we're having smooth connections with our words. What was always in Leo's pocket, Luke?
A marble.
A marble. Look at the top of this page. Do you see Nick sitting here? And he has his hand on his chin. He just does not look happy. This is the first time we've got to see her. Who is this lady that's sitting beside him? Matthew.
Mrs. Merritt.
Mrs. Merritt. And you can see he is in trouble because he has to sit beside her. He doesn't get to sit with his friends. Let's, Matthew, stand and continue reading for us.
Leo looked at the marble, and then at Nick. Then he looked at the marble.
Okay, then he looked what at the marble?
Then he looked back at the marble
There you go.
again. He thought to himself that Nick might like to have his special marble. Just then, Miss Lucy came out and gave each child a big spoonful of pudding. Leo forgot about the marble for a little while and enjoyed his dessert.
Ooh, thank you, Matthew. You may have a seat. Continue, Luke. At the second paragraph on page 12.
Later that night, Leo could not sleep. His mind was full of hard questions that he could not answer. Who am I? He thought to himself. If I'm not a son or a brother or a grandchild, who am I? Who? Said an owl perched on a branch by the window. Who? Leo put the pillow over his head so he couldn't hear the owl's questions. Then he had an idea. I can be a friend, he said. He crawled out of bed and felt his coat pocket for his
Read that
marble.
sentence again. He crawled out of bed.
He crawled out of bed and felt his coat pocket.
You missed
for
a
his
word
marble.
again.
He crawled out of bed and felt in his coat pocket for his marble. He put it out and tiptoed
Not
over.
put it out.
He pulled it out
Mhm.
and tiptoed over Nick's bed.
Over to whose bed?
Over to Nick's bed.
Mm-hmm.
Nick was awake too. Leo thought that he must have heard the owl.
Thank you, Luke. You may have a seat. We're going to work on making our words smooth and paying attention. That way our reading is not as choppy. So why couldn't Leo sleep, Matthew?
Because he was thinking about the marble.
That's part of it. He was thinking about the marble. There's something else that he was thinking about, though, Luke.
He was thinking about who he was.
Who he was. He couldn't sleep because he had all of these questions running through his mind, so he was trying to think of all of the answers for this. What did he do? You can look at the picture on your book. What did he do to help him try to be able to sleep? What did he do with his pillow? Matthew.
He put it over his head.
He put it over his head. And if you look at that picture, you can see he has his green blanket and he has his pillow. And that's what he got to bring in his box when he came to the Merritt house. Look at the bird outside the window. See that owl? See how he's sitting on the branch right there? That's called perching. So when we read about the owl perched on the branch, That's what that word means right there. Matthew, stand and continue reading for us.
Why are you up? Nick asked. I have something to show you, said Leo. As he held up the prized marble, Nick's jaw dropped. This is the coolest marble you will ever see, Leo said. I think the blue stands for friendship and the silver stands for forever. I want you to have it.
Thank you, Matthew. You may be seated. What two colors were on this marble, Luke? Matthew, help him out.
Blue and silver.
Alright, and then Matthew, what colors were they?
Blue and silver.
Stand on the answer.
Blue and silver.
Blue and silver. What does the blue stand for, Luke?
Stands for friendship.
Stands for friendship. And then what does the silver stand for?
Forever.
So if you put both of those words together, it could be friends forever. It's pretty cool. Turn the page. Page 14. Stand and continue reading Luke.
Wow, this marble is worth 10 marbles, said Nick. Thank you. You can have as many of my marbles as you want. But Leo only smiled. He didn't need any marbles. Having a friend was good enough.
Thank you, Luke. You may have a seat. And that was good expression. And because of the good expression that you had, it helped your reading be smooth. So what we work on, they all work together to help us have good reading. So what did Leo do with his favorite marble, Matthew?
He gave it to Nick.
He gave it to Nick. If you had a favorite toy that you just got for your birthday, just got for Christmas, would you be willing to give it to your friend who was having trouble? I don't know. Leo, he was showing what a good friend should be. When Leo gave Nick his marble, did he want anything back in return, Luke?
Not really, no.
No, but so why did he not want anything back? He thought this was more important than getting something back. Luke.
You wanted a friend?
Yeah, he wanted a friend. Why do you think he would choose having a friend over a marble, Matthew?
His friendships are more important.
Yeah. What is something that friendships will last forever, just like the color, the silver on the marble. So friends last forever, but our toys, the marble, they're gonna go away. They're not gonna matter to us one day. But friends, they will. We still have a couple minutes left before we finish reading, so let's go back to the beginning, to page 9. It should be probably under your chair there, the page. Alright, so it's going to be the beginning of the chapter, chapter 2. And who began reading for us? Was that you, Matthew? It was Luke. So Matthew, you can stand and start reading on chapter 2. And again, we're just going to be reading and work on your expression because that helps with your smoothness, because that's what we're looking for today.
Leo and Nick are a marble and some friends.
Whenever we start a new chapter, we always read the title. So read the title for me.
A marble and some friends.
There you go.
Leo and Nick followed Mrs. Merritt down the long hall. Unlike Miss Lucy, Miss Merritt was quite young.
Not Miss Merritt.
Mrs. Merritt was quite young. Leo thought the clothes she wore made her look important. She seemed to walk with her head held high.
Thank you, Matthew. Luke.
When they entered the busy dining hall, they joined a long table of children. Mrs. Merritt told Leo to find a seat, and Nick followed her up to the head of the table. Just then, a hand tugged at Leo's sleeve. He turned to see a little girl with red hair. She motioned for him to sit across from her.
Who remembers who this little girl is? Matthew, do you remember what her name was?
Angelica.
Angelica. Continue reading, Luke.
He turned to see a little girl with red hair. She motioned for him to sit across from her. He went around the table and sat. After Mrs. Merritt took her seat, they began to eat. "You're new, aren't you?" she said.
What did say
said
that one more
the
time?
little girl.
There you go.
I'm Angelica Christ, but Mrs. Merritt says you don't have to say the last part of all the time. So you can just call me Angelica. Hi, I'm Leo, he said, and I'm Ella, the blonde girl next to him said, as she tossed her hair.
Thank you, Luke. Matthew.
Make sure you eat all your food or you don't get dessert. We get dessert? Leo asked with wide eyes. Pudding, Angelica cheered, but only if you eat all of it. Or only if you eat it all.
There you go. Good checking yourself and going back and fixing.
She pointed to his green beans with her fork. Leo ate the beans in no time. There was no way he'd miss out on pudding. Between bites, he looked down the table at Nick, and he looked like he had learned his lesson. His chin was resting on his hand, and he was pushing the beans around on his plate. Maybe I have something that will cheer him up, Leo thought to himself. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a shiny marble. He had found it one day out in the woods when he had...
Oh, make sure we stop after periods and we pause. What color were his marbles, Matthew? The marble that was in his pocket?
Blue and silver.
Blue and silver. Luke, continue reading for us. Page 11, the second paragraph.
When he had dusted the dirt from it, he saw that the marble was two of his favorite colors. He had never had many toys, and he thought his marble was pretty special. It was the biggest and best marble he had ever seen, and it was always in his pocket. Leo looked at the marble, and then at Nick. Then he looked back at the marble again. He thought to himself that Nick might like to have his special marble. Just then, Miss Lucy came out and gave each child a big spoonful of pudding. Leo forgot about the marble for a little while and enjoyed his dessert. Later that night, Leo could not sleep. His mind was full of hard questions that he could not answer.
Thank you, Luke. Matthew. Top of page 13.
Who am I? He thought to himself. If I'm not a son or brother or grandchild, who am I? Who? Said an owl perched on a branch by the window. Who? Leo put the pillow over his head so he couldn't hear the owl's questions. Then he had an idea. I can be a friend, he said. He crawled out of bed and felt in his coat pocket for his marble. He pulled it out and tiptoed over to Nick's bed. Nick was awake too. Leo thought he must have heard the owl.
Leo thought what?
Leo thought that he must have heard the owl. Why are you up? Nick asked. I have something to show you, said Leo. As he held up his prized marble, Nick's jaw dropped.
Thank you, Matthew. Luke. Last paragraph on page 13.
This is the coolest marble you will ever see, Leo said. I think the blue stands for friendship and the silver stands forever. I want you to have it. Wow, this marble is worth 10 marbles, said Nick. Thank you. You can have as many of my marbles as you want. But Leo only smiled. He didn't need any marbles. Having a friend was good enough.
Thank you, Luke. You may have a seat. And that was excellent expression when you just read that paragraph on that page. Tonight for homework, you're going to be reading pages 15 through 17, and you're going to be reading about a secret hiding place that all the friends that they're going to find. So go ahead, put your books away, and prepare for arithmetic.